Yeah. All right, here we go. I'm so excited. So Sam Sutherland is joining us today, and I'm really excited to have Sam here because I met Sam, I can't even remember how many years ago we met.
Oh,
Um,
at least
a long
15.
time, when you used to work in Druth,
Yes,
Red
yeah,
Ruth, for
back in
those
the
of you
day.
who don't live in Cornwall. And so you've had lots of different journeys and stuff, but your recent incarnation is financial fairy godmother, which I
Yes,
really like.
I was given that name by a client actually.
Yeah, I
Just
think that's amazing.
magically helped around. She's like, "Oh my God, you're like my financial fairy godmother," and that's where it came from.
I love it. So basically, who are you and what do you do?
Well, thank you for obviously inviting me on here. That's the first thing I want to say. So I am what you would call as a money coach. I like to support, encourage, empower, and educate people on having a better relationship with their finances. Too many days do we see that people are struggling and making sure that our bills are paid, robbing Peter to pay Paul. And it was just a decision I made a couple of years ago to take that leap to help people in a way that I felt that they needed. And it's just gone from strength to strength since then. And so many people are going, hand up, I need that support, but they've got it in a very caring, non-judgmental, factual way, really.
Very, very good. And what led you kind of to where you are now? Because I know it's been kind of a roundabout roundhouse journey.
Yeah, so I've been in financial services plus 20 years, showing my age now. And again, working in the banking industry and finance, and I've been a mortgage advisor and insurance advisor for 20 years. I could see too many people just struggling with the day-to-day stuff, the very what some people will call the basic stuff, but actually to others it's not basic. It's really
Mm.
important, and we're not educated on it, and we're just thrown out into this wide world on, right, pay your bills, pay your rent, what's a direct debit, and people coming into the bank too many times are saying, I don't know why I'm in my overdraft. I don't know why what's going out of my account, and I just don't understand why I'm in debt all the time. When I was in the bank, I was trying to spend time with those people to break it down and work with them. But the bank were like, this is not your job role. And I'm like, but they need that support. They
Mhm.
need that education and information to be able to make a better relationship with their money. So I set up my own business called Kerno Bill Support, helping people really with making sure they've got the best utility bills, making sure that they've got the right direct debits, they're not overpaying for insurances and cars and things like that. And the bank said to me, sorry, you can't do that. It's conflict of interest. And I was like, how? The people need. Anyway, so I was like, right, I'm going to take that massive leap. And I left an employed role to go self employed to support people in a way that I felt that they need it. And here I am 2.5 years later.
Yeah, and I think that's vastly underestimated actually, because I'm looking now at my teenagers
Mm-hmm.
who are having their jobs for the first time, and my eldest now looking at having to pay tax for the first time in a
Yeah.
gap year because they've been working so much,
Yeah.
and they're horrified about how much of their paycheck is being taken off them, and we're like,
Absolutely.
yeah, we
They do,
know.
and they do. And the schools don't teach us about tax or national insurance. What's it actually for? Let's go and give you a student loan. And then, oh, by the way, you've got to pay that back. Oh, have I? Did I? I didn't know that. How do I pay that back?
Yeah.
And that's where that vicious circle of money and finance and debt kind of rolls into our adulthood of like, now I need to go and get a mortgage. I need to pay for bills I haven't got money for. So I'm going to take out borrowing. But what's the implications of that? What's the long-term goals? And how could I either have a positive relationship with debt or keep
Yeah.
out of debt? Debt can be a positive for some reasons, but it's having that understanding of it
Yeah.
long term and saving. It's saving from a young age. If you put a tiny little bit of money away from even little toddlers, the positive implication of money when they come in their 20s, 30s, and 40s will be massive. But we're not taught to do that. So that's kind of where my journey goes as well.
Yeah, and it's a shame actually, because when the kids were born, the government was doing that savings scheme for kids where they
Yeah,
gave you like £250
that's
and you
it.
had to invest it
Yeah,
for them to get when they were 18 or whatever it is. So both mine, because of that, and we've added on top of the pot
yeah,
just became an automatic thing that came out of the account. And, it's made a significant difference from birth to 18 is a lot of savings.
Absolutely. And, for us as a family, I'm not saying everybody can afford to do this, but we've worked it in our budget, child benefit. So we missed out by, I think, 8 months of my daughter getting the child trust fund.
Yeah.
So we didn't get that. So as soon as we started getting child benefit, we didn't use that within our monthly income. We've put that away every month. And actually, we've now invested some of it in other things, and they've got probably more money than we do. But for us, that's for their education, that's for their future. They can, hopefully they'll go off and do an education. They'll want cars and deposits for houses. And, as our income is, how do we provide that? So that's why we've started young.
And
we've
it's
always
difficult, especially being an older parent, because you don't have that glorious timeline of savings. You've got this small little pot of time where you're going from being single people to suddenly having children, which is actually quite expensive.
Yes.
And then, especially with all the clubs and all the other things they do.
Oh, God,
and then you're thinking like, well, I'm trying to put some money away for retirement.
Yeah.
But, the kids need all of these things, and then they've got school and university and all of the kind of stuff there. And everyone's like, yeah, they can just get student loans for university. I'm like, yeah, but when I went to school, I paid £50 a week in rent, and now 200.
Yes.
Right. And the
It's
loans
massively different.
actually haven't increased that much. It doesn't cover it.
No.
And so and even if they're working part-time jobs, they are never going to cover what I was able to cover back then.
Absolutely not. And I think what you've done is hit the nail on the head with how you need to look at it, is those three things: things you need now, things you need tomorrow, and things you need in the future. And when I'm advising and supporting people, I always do those three pots: today, tomorrow, the future. Yeah. And we even do that with our girls now, since they were tiny. And we did it with, the pocket money, birthday money, any Christmas money. They always split it into three. And that, their today money is their little tin in their room that they can spend on toys and sweets, whatever it is. And then their future money and their long-term stuff. And they watch it grow. And we show them on just a whiteboard. We write down another £5 on there. And they love watching that grow. And they're coming up for 13 and 10 now. And they know that they've got money saved that they've done. And if they want some bigger things like new surfboards and, or they always like new toys, they can contribute towards it. Yes. We're not saying they have to pay the full amount, because life is expensive, but they can contribute, and they feel more ownership that they've put money towards something of their own, and they care for it more. So it's really important to have that from a young age. But we, of a generation and a few generations either side, have missed out on that. And I think this is where I would really like to bring this in, and there's never been that kind of support to have a money coach that can guide you on how to make little changes to have a positive relationship with money. You've got a few online websites, I'm not naming any names, but they would take you hours to go through all that if you click on all the links. But it's also having somebody that you can understand, you can get you, can feel where you've been, where you're going, what emotions you're going through, that can also support you out of that. I had a lady I was coaching the other day. She messaged me, she goes, I feel great after talking to you. It feels like I've just had a therapy session. But it's about,
well, there's a lot of shame associated with being able to manage money. I know for myself that I've fallen into all kinds of potholes, and I think because I've just always worked. So I'm like, well, if something happens, I can just work more. That's fine. Yeah. But actually, that doesn't always happen. And because of the way things have changed so much, it isn't always enough either. And certainly with a lot of the women that I know in my age group that have gone through massive disasters of all kinds, whether it's sick children, whether it's having to leave work permanently, or divorce, which is very expensive, because when you're starting from zero at 45, that's big.
Yeah. And exactly that. I had another, she's a wonderful lady. She says, I had a message. The first one was, I really don't think you can help me, but you're my last resort. And she'd gone through a divorce. She'd used the credit cards to pay the legal fees, and she wasn't getting
groceries.
The groceries.
It's big stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I said, look, let's just, and one word I say when I do my workshops and stuff is you need to get financially naked. You know, people either love it or they hate it, but you need to get financial. You need to lay everything out on the table. You need to really get to know what you've got and what you haven't got,
Yeah.
and how to work towards those goals. And anyway, I managed to. It was actually in her scenario, could refinance her property, cleared off all her debts into one lump sum and save her like £500 a month.
Hmm.
And she was like, I honestly thought I was going to have to sell my home. And that made a massive, massive change and impact on her life. And that's kind of what gives me that job satisfaction, to support people and just feel that there's other ways. And even just the talking can sometimes benefit people.
It's huge. And it's a relief to know for a lot of women that, yeah, you might have gone astray and things might have
Yeah.
gone wrong, but actually, nobody is going to think you're a terrible person because either things have happened or you've made some bad choices. It doesn't make you a bad person.
Correct. And again, one of the top tips that I can give people is you really, really need to forgive your financial past. You need to forgive it. We only know what we know. We're only taught what we're taught. And to be able to, money is a taboo. It was never talked about as a child either around families. It certainly wasn't around, necessarily around mine or other people that I know. And then we're put into these situations that we genuinely don't really know about. So we have to forgive all that, and we have to look at how we can change that. I've been there. I even fell into finance. I didn't start that way. I was going to go off and train racehorses and event horses until I did my back in, and I couldn't do that career anymore. So I just went and got any old job that I got to put some money, pay my car, all that kind of stuff. And it was actually a telesales role, and that telesales role spiraled into being promoted. And then I thought, you know what, I actually quite like this finance stuff, and I did all my qualifications. So I actually fell into finance through a tough time in life. And as a families and children, you get to those moments where you're like, oh my god, I don't know how I'm going to do Christmas this year. And we've all been there. And I think we just need to one, forgive our financial past. Two, stop comparing ourselves to everybody else,
Mhm.
because we don't know what they're going through. Just because they've got brand new cars and stuff, yeah, I have those conversations quite a bit.
Yeah.
Just because they have a nice car and a holiday a couple of times a year doesn't mean they're in a financial freedom situation.
And also, I think, people vastly underestimate the meaning of two salaries these days.
Correct.
Because if you are a single parent doing all of that on your own, nice
Yeah.
cars and holidays aren't necessarily on your radar. But when you have extra salary, you've got much more room to move
Yes.
if you're being sensible about things,
Yes.
rather than
And
extravagant about
and
things.
I think that's the other thing, you're talking about making sure you're budgeting,
Yeah.
live within your means. But a lot of those people don't. They're probably in more stress and more debt than you think they are. They may from the outside look like they've got it all sorted, but probably deep down and behind the scenes, they haven't. And, for them, and I've had those as well, £3 million houses, multiple businesses. But when you look behind the scenes, they're like,
It's
I
a
haven't got a clue.
disaster.
I haven't got a clue what goes in, what goes out. And I just spend it, and I don't know why I'm in debt. And then you go, right, that'll be why. Let's have that conversation.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And it does come to back all the way to the basics of
Yeah.
what goes in and what goes out. Yeah.
Yes,
And
absolutely. That.
again, I think forgiving the financial past is an important thing as well, because again, you know what you know at the time, and
Yeah.
whatever stress you were under with all that stuff going on at the time,
Yeah.
you can choose to stay there, or you can choose to actually, it's time to get a control of this, to get a grip, to take some lessons, to
Yeah.
ask for advice,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do some of your courses. And to really take control. And I find it really interesting because, with all the stuff in my financial past, my inspiration is looking at women in their 50s who've gone through all kinds of stuff and have still managed to turn it around in their 50s and
Yeah.
be okay at the end of it and support the kids and blah blah blah. So
Yeah.
just because, I'm older and some of my friends are older and they're really frightened about the future now,
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
to stay that way. Actually,
Yeah.
there is some modicum of control that you can have over
There
that
is.
money.
Yeah, there is. It's that having that mindset shift. We're very much now into the world of changing our mindset. Now, whether that's our mindset on health, whether that's mindset on relationships, we're still very early days on the mindset around money. And there are all those wonderful techniques that we can use in the other elements of our life, but that can also fit within the money.
Hmm.
And it is about understanding, forgiving your past, looking to the future, and just having a structured plan that can get you out of any of those negative parts of our lives that we go through.
Yeah, and they're huge things because I think, they weigh people down, and I think that the stress behind trying to make those extra pounds stretch to the end of the month is massive, and it
Yeah,
bleeds into everything.
absolutely everything, your work life, your relationship with
Yep.
partners, kids, um you know
Sleep, health
but
behaviors,
yeah,
health
health,
choices.
yes,
Yeah.
the stress that it causes, and that the weight that it has on your body, and you see it all the time in what you do, and that concrete shoulder feeling that you get when you've got stress. Now, a lot of it can be down to money, which is then affecting everything else, your relationship with your partner's kids, work, um, even enjoying some things. Everything just kind of starts to bottle up, and we bury our heads in the sand, and it's starting to learn and understand how to unravel that, how to work through it, so that one of those elements is in a
Yep.
positive mindset, work on the next element, and it's not easy. It's not easy, but there are ways to work around it
Yeah.
to have a much positive,
And I'd
more
say the
positive.
positive mindset is really important, but I think even more important is knowing the fundamentals. When
Yeah,
somebody sits down, goes through it with you, and you can make sense of it, and then you've got a plan and you can carry on, it's far easier then
yeah,
to feel that lift, and then you can actually see the way forward, and then the mindset becomes something that you get.
yes,
But I think if
yes,
you're buried under it and you're not making those grassroots changes,
yeah.
the mindset's always going to be out of reach.
Absolutely. Another lady that I've been supporting, she said, it is literally like having my head in the sand. I can't even pick up my bank statements and see them. It's almost like they're in a blur because I don't want to see them. I she just almost has a fear of seeing her bank statements come through the post or logging into her online banking. And that's where that haze comes in. And she just, we've talked and we've sat and we've gone through it and we've broken it down into little pieces. And, she's messaged me going, I can log in, I can pick up my bank statements because I'm not so scared anymore because I understand what's going on. And it is that fear factor and the taboo and the whole shame of money that makes us have that buried in the head in the sand feeling, and
Yeah.
that's very natural, very normal. Again, we only know what we know and what we've been taught, and it's
I
just
was
not.
just going to say that because it's the unknown, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Because then it grows over you, and you've got this big mountain over your head,
yeah,
and it just gets overwhelming then. It's like the wave's going
absolutely.
to take you under.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then you think, and you think somebody is going to judge you, and I keep bringing up examples of people that I've worked with because it's so important to get across how they have felt and what changes can be made. A lady message going, I've had a financial advisor come out to me, and I am, please, Kevin, I'm not putting any financial advisors down. But when they arrived in their suit, briefcase, she said, right, so I'm in debt. How do I get out of it? And they laughed at her and said, what, do you don't want, no, you've got nothing to invest and pensions? And she was like, no,
And
I'm,
that's what they're after. Yeah.
but that's also what they're
It's part of
educated
their
in. That's
job,
what
but
they
I mean,
do. Yeah.
you need to do that to get to that.
Yes.
It's not like they don't want to, but they just need to get their act together first.
But the title of a financial advisor is for pensions, investments, potentially mortgages and life insurance. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's what they do. And they're fabulous at that. But it's that little bit before in the people that don't fit in that bracket that
Yeah.
need that little
That's
bit
the
to get
gap.
together. Yeah, that's
That's
the
the
gap.
gap.
Yeah. And that's where I made that decision to, go self-employed, which was, again, a real tough money decision to make as a family, to make this
Yeah.
work to help people, but also financially, I've got a family to feed.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but the support that I can give people has made a huge difference on, because I do other things. I do loads of things, and you know that, Mary, and I got lots of hats that I wear.
Yes, you do.
This is just one of them, but it's got a real good, satisfying side to it to help people in need.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a hugely important thing because, filling that gap for people. Because again, when you meet up with somebody like that, all it does is make you feel worse
Yeah.
because you aren't even on that radar yet, but you still have no idea how to get there.
Yeah. Who do you ask? Who do you ask if you're in? I know that there are a few. There's Citizens Advice, and you've got some debt advice companies, but sometimes that isn't what you need. It's about understanding your money.
Yeah. Yeah.
If
And
you,
actually the debt advice companies, like some of the better ones, like I've been tracking some of it that are, for women, who are often in very different
yes,
circumstances than men,
yes,
not to be sexist, but we are. Um, and just looking at, and also some of the debt arrangement things, which are vastly breaking because of the level of interest some of these places charge.
yes.
So actually, I think it's quite dangerous for people who are very financially vulnerable.
Correct. And it can put them in a very more vulnerable position going forward because
Yes,
it ruins their credit score.
it
So
does.
if you do have a mortgage, but you also have debts, and I've had this before where they've been told to go and do these plans and just put their hands up to all the creditors and go, not paying you, they'll arrange it. That causes a massive effect for years on your credit file.
Yeah.
So it's trying to catch it at a point where actually we can manage it without huge impacts on credit score.
Yeah.
There are some times where that is the next step because
Yeah.
it's got to a point, and that's okay. But that's a way out. That's a way forward. That's a way to support that in
But
a manageable
without
way.
the learning
Yes.
of how to then recreate the basics and manage the
Yes.
fundamentals, within
Yes.
5 years, you're right back there.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely that. And that's the scary bit is these management companies, they go, yeah, we can sort that. We can take this. We can change that monthly payment for you. Brilliant. But the education, the mindset,
Behavior
the
doesn't change.
knowledge is not that. No, the behavior doesn't change. And that's the massive point of where we need to get. And then you'll be
Yeah.
so surprised how that will empower you as an individual to make better choices.
Yeah. It's huge. And I think it's a credit trap as well, because I have all these credit cards that I don't use, and then I have some that I do use, but I can't just get rid of them because it absolutely will decimate the credit rating. So I
Yes
worry
and
about that
no.
because well, I've moved things around and seen my credit
Yeah.
rating drop. So I'm very conscious of that.
Yes.
But it's interesting because I want to move things around, but also it leaves me open to fraud and to other things that can happen because
Yeah.
the cards are just sitting there not really being used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing with having, just on that point, having lots of credit card limits available, although you're not using them,
Yeah.
when you're having scorings done for something you do need, they will take that available limit into account.
Yeah.
So having all these empty credit cards actually doesn't have a positive effect on
Yeah.
credit score. Sometimes closing some down and just having those emergency ones on the better rates are more
Yes.
more
Yes.
positive for your credit rating. And also if you want to go and get another redo your mortgage, they will look at the all available limit, whether you've spent it or not, and you've got zero balance but you've got a limit of 10
Yeah.
grand. They will take that into sometimes affordability as well. They'll
Yeah.
see you've got it there.
Yeah.
It's such, credit scoring is a minefield.
It's a minefield of nonsense is what it is.
Absolute minefield, and there is
Yeah.
no set black and white. There is, every lender's different, every provider's different, and they score differently. So it's a minefield, and again, it's understanding that a little bit more, which obviously I've been doing for years. But we only know what we know when we're not educated on these things.
Yeah.
If you said to a child or a teenager now, "What's a credit score?" Wouldn't have a clue.
Wouldn't have a clue. Nope.
Probably don't even know what interest rate is.
My 18-year-old says, I need a credit card. I'm like,
Do
no, you
you?
don't. You do not.
Oh,
Well, I'm trying to build a credit rating. So when I go to buy a house, I can have, I'm like, you don't need a credit card for that. Oh my God.
no.
So it's
Mobile phone
everything, right?
contracts, all those things are a credit score.
Phone contracts, the whole lot,
Yeah.
it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. But then if you've got nothing, you also have no credit score.
Yes.
You can't win. You can't win.
You can't win. You can't win. If you manage, the better you manage your money, the more they just want to avoid you, really, because actually they don't make any money off you. They like people being in debt because they're
No,
making loads of money off people being in debt. So
that's sad, isn't it? Very
yeah.
sad.
No, it's really tragic actually. And I think, when I look at some of the student loan payments, um, because I was very lucky because when I studied here, even though my loans were in Canadian funds, but the exchange rate was so high, I was able to pay them off really quickly. And I
Good.
really put my head down and just kept living like a student and absolutely hammered it
Yeah,
for the
good.
first 5, 6 years that I was working, uh,
Yeah.
which was a lot. It was a lot.
And that is, and you think if the student loan thing, which is great, going to education, I'm all for it, and building a better life in the future, and you going to university and college and doing that cost you a fortune,
Mhm.
but it's now earning you a salary. But also, you imagine those years of that student loan, you
Yeah,
could have put a deposit on a house, you could have been maybe mortgage free by
I
now.
could
I
have
don't
been
know really,
mortgage free. Yeah,
but yeah, it's all those
yeah,
things. But if you had more information at the beginning, you could make more financial decisions early on. Like if a child now, if you put away into a child's pension now at a young age, before they're at secondary school, they will have a pension better than any of our salaries could ever be. And they would be able to have, a very resilient financial future. And it's
yeah,
only like £10 a month. You're not talking hundreds of pounds a month into a child
yeah,
savings pot. You're talking tiny for in comparison of what people think they need to put away.
yeah. Yeah, anything,
Yeah,
anything. And again,
£5 a
it's,
month,
it's the long
something.
period of time. So the
Yeah,
sooner you start, the
correct.
better, really.
Like £5 a month, even if it's that for the children's future, um, is massive.
Yeah, no, it all makes a difference, doesn't it?
Mm. As soon
So
as they leave school, get them in a pension.
get them in a
There
pension.
won't be any state pensions when they get there.
No, no, there won't be. There won't be. There, well, even looking for us. Um, so the other hats that you wear are
Mhm.
doing wills and
Yes,
power of attorney,
yes.
trusts and insurances. Now, wills and power of attorney is a really interesting one
Hmm.
because a lot of people don't do it. And my
They
dad,
don't.
who's a criminal barrister, didn't have a will.
Wow, wow.
I know, I could have killed him. If he wasn't already
Not until
dead.
you signed it, though. Not until it's written on. Do you
You
know what?
know?
I don't, and I think again, it's one of those things that people think, "Oh, I only need to do it when I'm old. I only need to do it when I've got something."
Yeah.
And it really isn't. It's something that is important now. We don't have a crystal ball when we're going to die, when we're going to, what we want for our guardian, for our children. That's another
That was
thing.
it. That was a really scary one to go through actually when I did it.
Was
They
it?
like, what if that person dies? What if that person dies? What if
Yeah.
that person dies? I'm like, oh my God. I don't have that
Yeah.
many people that I would trust my children with.
But if you haven't got a will with your guardianship and you pass away while your children are still underage,
Yeah.
then there are processes and there are means. But if you haven't got a guardian written down, then they go into local authority, foster care, support care,
Yeah.
until they have found somebody that will take them. And then they have to almost fight for them.
Yeah, they
Um,
do. Yeah, it's really scary.
yeah, so it's having those things. So it's also about leaving your assets, leaving them to who you want them to have, whether it's your home, whether it's your car, your jewelry, all those things. Because we know when it comes to families and somebody passes away, if it's
I
not
think it's
written
sticky.
in stone,
Yeah.
everybody comes out the woodwork. So protecting your assets, protecting your belongings, your wishes. What do you want to have happen to you and your children? So it's so, so important to have a will in place, because if not, it can take years to sort out if it
Yeah.
goes to probate and the local authorities to decide.
Yeah, no, and it's awful. And I think after, especially post all the lockdowns and COVID and all the massive employment shift, a lot of those agencies are vastly understaffed.
Yeah.
So they're like years
Yep.
of
Yes.
on,
Absolutely. Yes.
which can be, by the time a child ends up somewhere that would have been a home, they'll be 18.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I
Yeah.
mean, I know with the authorities, bless them, they will try and put them somewhere that with the children they know. So if they can put them with family, they do try, but it's not always that simple, especially if they're not local family. And there's just so many other tick boxes as well. But if you've got it written in your legal document, documentation of a will,
Yeah.
then that's what it is. And then those guardians can make those right decisions for your children, knowing your best wishes, what you would have wanted for them.
Yeah.
And that's when some of the, life insurance as well, when you've got that, they can financially support those guardians and the children while they're still growing. And also when they are old enough and if funds still available, will support them in their future.
Yeah, no, it's a big thing. The other thing I think with insurances too and financial planning is that when I was younger, before children, the financial planners I worked with were all men.
Yep.
Not one of
Yes.
them had a
Nope.
discussion with me about you need to actually put money away for maternity leave.
Yes. Yeah.
Funny
And then,
that.
and it, yes,
Yeah.
it's good. It is that old-fashioned thing, isn't it? And
Yep.
the suited and booted and flash car. I went on a training course not long ago, and a guy used to work in it, and he goes, "I remember we had to wear suits, and it was in education he was in, had to be like in a suit and tie for education,
Yeah.
and the children never opened up to them. It was all very different, and that suit can be an absolute barrier. It's really needed in some certain things, absolutely, but it can also be a big barrier to understanding the big picture. But as a female,
Our financial journeys are very, very different.
yeah, predominantly I've worked in a male industry. It's totally different now, I have to say. A lot more female financial advisors I know now than I have ever done before. But it is looking at that whole picture. Like, excuse me, you got a mortgage, you're a single person, you need life cover. Do you? If you die and you're a single person, do you really need the life cover? Personally, as an advisor, you should be looking at why you're still alive, your income protection. If you can't work, you can't pay your mortgage. So
Yeah.
what importance is paying life cover when you haven't got any dependents to leave that to? Now is what's important, paying your bills while you're still here, critical illness, that sort of thing. So it's having that holistic advice rather than the old fashioned, right, mortgage, life cover, done. It's looking at, have you planned for this? Have you planned for that? What about if, lots of cover for pregnancy, lots of cover for children, critical illness, touch wood. And, sadly, we've probably all seen it very close to our heart, but having cover for your kids. We insure our TV and washing machine and Sky.
Yeah.
What about
It's
our
interesting,
babies?
isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And even like when people come in for care and when they're trying to budget things, they're like, "Oh, my maternity pay only covers this and only that." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't realize you're a single parent." And they look at me. I'm just like, "Well, if you are a couple with finances, then
Yeah,
should you be having a conversation about the fact that the child is not just your financial responsibility,
yeah,
both of you?"
yeah. That's a really,
It's a
really
really
tough
shocking
one.
thing to
Yeah,
me.
it's a
That
very
women are
shocking one.
living on starvation to make it work on their 99 pounds a week when they're used to having a full-time salary.
Do you know how common that is?
I know how common it is.
You know how common that
It's
is.
shocking.
And this is no, I'm not trying to put down any, the men at all. I think it's just the way that it works. Or
But there's no financial conversation.
that's exactly what I'm
And
saying.
it's
That's
shocking.
what I've shown. That's what has been shown to
Shocking.
me is when
Yeah.
they come to me and talk about debts. Oh, I've got this credit card and my husband doesn't know about it. Okay, maybe the first thing we need to do is have a conversation with your husband. And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
but where has that come from? Where it's just digging deep into those conversations about why that's come up. Why do they feel uncomfortable? And actually, there's
Well,
been a
because
couple
we've
of times.
always been independent women with our own
Absolutely.
salaries.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you have a child
Yeah.
and you are on maternity leave for a period of time.
Yeah.
And some of it paid, some of it not paid.
Correct.
I had to take a loan out to stay home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which paid off when I went back to work, but that was my choice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's shocking that there's no conversation. And I think because women are really embarrassed to have to ask their husband for money
Yeah.
to do things like the grocery shopping.
Yes. And they do. And then they do the credit card thing.
Yeah.
And then they end up
I don't know where the
cycle.
husband think the money's coming from because it ain't coming from him.
Yeah. But then how they
Like,
get an understanding of that, how, like you say, it's that being aware.
yeah.
Should they be aware that that money isn't coming in, but they're still spending it? It is a conversation that needs to be had. And as uncomfortable it's been for a few people that I've spoken to, it doesn't always go positively, and that's something I can't direct, but
Yeah.
when it has, they were like, I wish I'd have done it a long time ago.
Yeah.
That's okay. Forgive your financial past, but now you're on another role. Now you're on another journey, which,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because I
it
think
is.
it's one of the big taboos, I think, in relationships is to have open conversations about money.
Yeah.
And I think like money and sex are the two things that destroy relationships because
Yeah.
of the lack of communication around it.
The conversation about it. You are in a relationship for those two reasons. To be
Yeah.
together, intimate, financially, as one. You can still have your own social lives, but you're still a partnership. And if you had a partnership like that in business, your
Yeah.
business would fail.
Oh,
If you don't have that
absolutely.
communication in business,
Yeah.
so you need to have that
Yeah. And right
that
down to salaries as well, I think. Because the other thing that I see a lot of is that you've got somebody who's a really high earner, whether it's male or female, but mostly the male at this point. And the lady goes off to have the maternity leave or whatever. And they're all putting 50% into this community account.
mm-hmm.
50% of somebody earning 100 grand and
Yeah,
50% of somebody earning
18.
17
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
18 or 20
yeah,
is vastly different.
absolutely.
So 50-50 doesn't work.
No, there's a really good, I'll have to find it and maybe send it to you. There's a really good video clip on one of the Facebooks or YouTube of a lady. She's very American. And she was like, there is no relationship that can work on 50-50. You have to, come in at the end of the day and tell your partner how much you've got left in emotionally as well. You can
Yeah.
have had a really hard day. And she comes in and says, whatever his name is, look, John, I've had a really tough day. I've got 20%. I've got nothing else to give you
Yeah.
today. Whether it's financial or emotional, you need to be genuinely honest. You can't be 50-50 every day. The woman can't do all the housework, the cooking, the cleaning, the working, but also the man can't. You've got to communicate with each
Yeah.
other financially, emotionally, and try and balance it in a way that works.
Yeah. 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 It is interesting. And certainly over time observing different relationships, either in my office or among friendships, you really see the ones that are in it and
Yeah,
are really committed to that fine balance of I'm going to show up for you.
yeah, absolutely. And we all need a bit of a break sometime, but it's them or us understanding that,
Yeah.
what, I've got this tonight. You go and
Yeah.
chill out, you go and go for a run,
Yeah.
or
We're
darling,
both
you go and have a hot
exhausted, but
bath.
I'm at 70 and you're at 20.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll grab it and run with it, and you just
yeah. And then
five.
it can't be that every day. We know that. You've got to have that you know
Balance.
balance. But yeah, darling, you go and have a bath, go and have 10 minutes out while you've been with the kids screaming in your ears all day. And then they might have had a tough day at work, so it's really hard. It is not
Yeah.
an easy journey in any way, shape, or form, but it's trying to have that understanding with each other.
Yeah. And I think it underlines everything, doesn't it? All of it, coming from yourself and educating yourself and then being able to work in a partnership, if you are in one. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's a big thing,
yeah.
because
And if
finances
it's not, you've
they can
got
make
to
or
give
break
me
people.
more. If you're not in a partnership, you've still got to have a good partnership relationship with yourself. You've
Yes, you
still
do.
got to balance yourself. If you haven't got 100% today, give yourself that 20% break. Whatever, you've got to have that relationship and partnership with you as well.
Yeah. Stop beating yourself up.
Correct. Oh, it's so hard, isn't it? We say it like this, don't we? But we
I
know it's
know.
not easy.
Yeah,
It,
coffee kettle black. We know. We all have days where we've just completely lost the plot and we're just not going to get there. And other days we're on it and it's fine.
100%. I hear you on that one.
Yes, and we all have little mouths feeding back to us to remind us of that.
And then you just have those moments you're like, I don't want to adult today.
Yes. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because when you're raising kids, you all of a sudden have the mini me's that you're answerable to on a completely different level, because no filter, no filter.
No, no.
Yeah.
I think there's something in the air at the moment though, because wow, she will be
Holding.
13 in a couple of months, and I'm just like, oh, this is only the start. But
Yeah.
they're great. They are great kids.
It's
I
a
can't.
journey.
Yes,
the
isn't it
journey.
just, isn't it?
For sure. So, well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on with me today. I know this will
Oh,
be really, really helpful for a lot of people, and I'm going to put your information below. And what I
okay.
also love about you is that you're local to us. So most of my area, my practice that will see this, can jump on the Facebook group, which is a free
Yeah.
group to ask for help and have discussions and get directions on different things, and good advice. And also access to where to find you to help with wills and power of attorney and mortgage advice or money coaching or some of the courses that you run, all of that kind of stuff, which really helps to fill in the gap. And I think that, that's something, and that's exactly what it is. It's a gap.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And just, everybody, it's confidential, it's non-judgmental, it's just some support advice with a bit of a hug. I always love a hug. But if you don't want a hug, I won't give one, that's fine. So yeah, it's just generally knowing there's somebody out there that you can reach out to, and that's really important to me.
I think
But
that's
thank you for
brilliant.
having me.
Well, I'm delighted. Anything else to add? Any final comments?
I don't think it. Just keep your eye out for the Financial Fairy Godmother's children's book.
Yes. Brilliant. Well,
Thank you.
thank
You take care, everybody, and yeah, just forgive your financial past, and you can do this.